Hey, IT changemakers, and welcome to The Deck Show with Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. I was recently in Boston, as many people will know, via the American capital, the American Dex capital, and I bumped into an old colleague and friend, Mike Lovewell, and we thought we'd better get him on the show. But we had a bit of trouble, Mike, because then you got ill. Is that right? You got
I
unwell.
did, but we're feeling much better today, which is good. You caught it as well, right? The Boston flu.
The Boston flu, and let me tell you, they make a serious flu out there.
They
You
do,
know, they're
they
not
do.
messing around. It's like the size, like the cars are bigger in America.
Mm.
Everything's bigger, including the viruses. I was whacked out for 3 days, 4 days. I was not doing well, Mike, but I am on the mend. And how are you doing now, sir? You seem bright and bushy,
Same,
bushy
same here.
tails, as they say.
Mine was like a 48-hour ordeal, but we're back and back to all things Dex
We're
as things
so
should be.
back, Mike.
That's
We're
right.
so back.
We are so
And
back.
although you're not back on the show, you're a first timer
I
after
am.
after all these years. Can't believe it. So if anyone doesn't know you out there in the Dex world, there's bound to be a few. Introduce yourself to begin with, please.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yes, first time on the Deck Show. Very honored. But my name's Mike Lovewell, so I'm an SE team lead now for the Northeast. I've been with NextSync for right around 8 years, so I've seen Dex before it was Dex, and NextSync really kind of boom in this space. But very happy to be with you today. I'm very honored.
We're delighted to have you. You know, we've had parallel NextThink lives a little bit. Tell us about your journey at NextThink, and maybe to give it kind of form, Mike. Talk to us about how your view of digital experience has evolved over that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have I would say pretty unique NextSync tenure. So I came in right out of college. So I hit the IT lottery. I like to say, I
Nice.
got very lucky by joining NextSync right out of the gate. But I actually joined in a sales motion. So I was on the BDR front, knocking down people's doors to try to answer on why digital employee experience was not just a nice to have, but it was something that they needed to have. And
Right.
I always joke when you used to make those calls about NextThink, it was, are you Netflix? Are you NextLink? Right? Who are you calling from? There was zero recognition, at least in the US back in the 2018s, 2019s.
Honey, we haven't paid the Netflix bill.
Yeah, they're calling us. They're going door to door now these days. But that very quickly led to me understanding the product, really being infatuated with what NextSync had, learning the demo instance, and I was able to go over and join the solution consulting organization right around COVID, so around 2020. So I've now been in a pre-sales role for going on like 6.5 years, and I've made my way over into a player coach role these days with some management and working on some strategic opportunities on the East Coast.
That's amazing. What stood out to you so much when you first got in the demo environment? What is your earliest memory of encountering the tech itself?
I won't bore you with the hours it used to take up to set up an engine and everything on the on-prem instance for a demo kit. But the thing that I vividly remember is sitting on some early NextSync demos and flashing things like the network view or the timeline view, and literally people's jaws dropping on the Zoom bridge, on the, I think back then it was GoToMeeting. We were seeing people visually in awe of things that NextSync was able to do and problems that it was solving that they've been having for years, decades in some instances. So it was cool to translate the things that were resonating with customers, but then understanding my own talk track, getting my hands on the product itself. Was very eye opening, and seeing all that NextSync could do, and not just kind of the blips that you were seeing in a salesman.
We discussed, Mike, the idea of you coming on maybe on a sort of recurrent basis to give us sort of updates from the field, as it
Yeah,
were,
yeah.
around the state of digital friction, like its causes, what's causing it in the modern digital workplace, what's ameliorating it in the same. But I had this really interesting conversation with a journalist just earlier this week, and they were kind of like, digital friction. I mean, who cares? Who cares? Like, who cares about digital friction? I thought, well, Joe, it's a harsh question, but it's a pretty reasonable question.
Yeah.
Why does digital friction matter so much in your view in 2026, Mike? And would you say it's the most consistent variable in DEX over the past decade easily, right? As well.
I would say 1000%. I don't know if it's always been called digital friction. I quite like the term, honestly. I think
Yeah. Yeah,
A
I like.
friction point is very, very tangible, very, very visual for folks. But yeah, it's extremely important. I think there's a couple things going on in the ecosystem right now that I've seen with all types of customers, all types of verticals, all different size organizations. But the single thread is that people just want to get their job done, right? I show up to work every day. I want my computer to work. I want my applications to work. I honestly want it to mirror my mobile device, right? My iPhone, my Android. I know how to work it. It always works. And if it doesn't, I can just hard reset it 30 seconds, very quickly, and I'm back up and running. There's an expectation, I think, with technology these days that everything associated should work in that same seamless, frictionless way. But the reality is that is very, very difficult for IT teams to deliver because of the complexities, right? You talk about multiple different operating systems, multiple different device types, physical, virtual, mobile. You have all different types of applications, on-prem, homegrown, SaaS applications where you're losing a lot of the historical control that you might have had 10, 15 years ago with that application architecture. All of those things can be friction moments, right? So some examples would be I'm logging into my device every morning and it's taking 3 minutes rather than 30 seconds. It's not a massive disruption, but if you start to extrapolate that over, 40 hours a week, an entire year across your population, that time loss is significant. Or things like VPN disruptions. We have it internally, right? Depending on your vendor, you're trying to access a very critical application. You're prepping for a very important meeting, and you're met with that application is not discoverable. That error on the web page. It's defeating. It's deflating. It's those disruptions that I think accumulate with an end user to ultimately lead to attrition, right? Not wanting to overperform. There's a number of different effects that I've seen with those microcosms of digital friction across the landscape. And I think now, in combination with Dex, because it's an answer to that friction, people are starting to identify that problem and even quantify it across the board.
You speak very well, Mike. I completely agree. And listen, so 6.5 years in a customer facing role. I'm interested in how the definition of digital friction has changed and how it stayed the same. Perhaps it's a question of getting on top of some issues, other issues rearing up. But I mean, how what contrast comes to mind when you consider those respective landscapes of then and now?
So I think the root causes of digital friction are exactly the same. I think it is just simply technology disruptions that are surfacing to the user. I think the problem now is the opportunities for those friction points to surface are tenfold, right? Maybe 20-fold, depending on what type of role you're in, what type of applications you're using. I'm sure at some point today we're gonna talk about artificial intelligence, but that's a whole other wrinkle into this digital friction ecosystem because of the different angles that I can see it, right? I can see it with VPNs, I can see it with SaaS applications, I can see it with CPU and GPU powered devices, right? There's so many different points where those little points of disruption will come into play. The other piece is for me to get my job done in this day and age, there's multiple tools that I need. So if those tools are not working, continuously and simultaneously, then there's also going to be those, what they call flow state interruptions. I can really get into a groove. I'm working on my Salesforce accounts and doing all the things that I need to as a seller, but then something in the application doesn't work. Or even worse, I don't know how something works in the application. That is also another, available way that friction is going to come in from the user's perspective. But I really think the quantity and the avenues where friction can come to play have increased, but the actual causes have stayed the same over the last 10, 15 years.
What issues do you think we've consummately got on top of, if and as long as people are aware of the solutions, in particular when you just contrast the then and now?
Which ones do we have visibility into today? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, where do you feel we've made the most like resounding strides in
Mm,
really being able to manage digital friction? Because there's always going to be, as you say, with growing complexity, there's always going to be new challenges. But
yeah.
if you're listening and you're from a digital workplace that's still struggling with X and Y, you really, really should have sorted that out 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah. I actually think the biggest gain that I've seen in ecosystems or in organizations is with application adoption. So Nextync obviously has some history there with, a previous acquisition to talk about the DApp space. But I think very complicated applications or high traffic applications. So think about your HR solutions, your emergency medical record solutions, even, sales tools or revenue generating applications. Oftentimes they're shipping with in-app guidance. So how do I go in and actually get a task done in one of these tools that's now going to be readily available to all of your users? I think that has significantly reduced some points of digital friction. I think in custom applications, you can use true digital adoption platforms to overlay guided walkthroughs and different elements across those applications. I think that has been a significant increase or decrease in the actual digital friction across organizations. I think there is still a ton of work to be done on the technology side, right? There's been monitoring solutions forever, right? Let's call it the last 2 decades at least, on the devices, on the network, on applications. I think Dex is uniquely positioned to start to give that proactive visibility to users to make sure that the users are not facing those friction points. We know where they are from monitoring solutions, but the actual resolution, I think, is what's lagging in contrast to the digital adoption piece. I think that has some great benefits already in organizations.
Amazing. Just a couple of minutes ago, like you mentioned, flow state.
Mm.
I've always loved the concept of flow state, and I think, look, as an employee, as a person, we can all relate to it, right? We know what a flow state is. Going back to 6 years ago when I started in Dex, right? I guess I always suspected it of being, for want of a better term, like a marketing concept that maybe wasn't the top of an IT professional or an IT team's genuine priority list. But as things have evolved and IT departments start to look at their work and responsibilities a little bit differently, do you think that's changed? Do you think it is, in fact, then and or now, something that the IT departments are genuinely motivated by, that they genuinely have that as an aspiration, the maintenance of focus and flow in the worker?
I think so. I think the number of initiatives that we're seeing about, sometimes it's just general employee productivity, but I think within that there are those KPIs or goals of achieving flow state, achieving the most productive end user and the happiest end user as possible. Those initiatives are now coming from C levels, right? Sometimes it's CEO down to CIO, sometimes it's actual CIOs that are maybe more on the forefront of addressing that challenge. But I think, listen, there's a demand from workers. I think, especially as new workers enter that workforce, there's an expectation that technology should just work, and that should not be the bottleneck for me getting my job done. There's going to be other environmental disruptions for sure, but my device, my applications, the things that are embedded in my workflow should just work. And I think now that is actually being recognized, that the bar has risen a little bit, right? The reliance on IT is declining, right? People are more apt to talk to chatbots or do self-service, try to fix things on their own, which leads to a whole other set of challenges. But in this conversation, absolutely, right? I think there's definite recognition that achieving flow state, keeping flow state, making sure that my users are as happy and productive as possible is right in the forefront of top technology or IT goals for a lot of organizations.
Let's put the flow to the side for a moment and think about sort of hard, tangible consequences of digital friction
Mm.
in 2026. Where is it starting to show up in the businesses you're working with in ways that leaders can't ignore? They can't look away.
Yeah, I would say there's two avenues. The first, I think, is just straight attrition, which I know I mentioned earlier, but people do leave jobs because they can't get their job done, right? And it's mostly due to those technology disruptions. If I'm working for a financial institution, maybe somewhere in Hartford, Connecticut, to do a little homage to Tim, if I'm not being able to get my job done at this location, I can go right across the street to another company who maybe has a higher emphasis on technology and giving you the tools necessary to get your job done. And if I could be, 1.5, 2 times more productive, it's better for the business. It's better for myself, more money in my pocket. But attrition and just user frustration, I think it should be top of mind. But if you want to bring it to a bigger business outcome, it directly ties to the bottom dollar, right? If I'm in a revenue generating application, let's call it, a call center, right? People are using those applications in a retail store. If my users are getting disrupted for even 3 seconds every time that they're on the phone with a consumer, with a customer of theirs, that extrapolation between, let's call it 1,000 other colleagues, now you're at 3,000 seconds every disruption. You multiply that across 40 hours a week and do some math there. That is actual productivity loss that is leading to less money in, more money out, right? More hours with handling time to your support team, to your call center. All of those things, all of these little micro disruptions, these friction points, ultimately do lead to productivity loss and dollars lost to the business. So no matter which angle you want to go to, usually I think people lead towards, if we're losing money, we need to fix it. And I think that's top of mind for a lot of people that we're talking to.
And we could have said that any time in the last sort of 6 years, I imagine. But we are more recently, we're entering an era of profound, perhaps unprecedented technological transformation with AI. You said we were going to touch upon it, Mike. You were
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And I guess my way of framing the first question about this is to what extent is the AI powered workplace reducing digital friction, and to what extent is it creating new categories of it or new consequences of it?
It's a great question, and it's a very fascinating topic because inherently AI should be making things easier, right? It should be helping with flow state. It should be reducing those friction points because I'm offloading work, right? I'm having creation be done in a different mechanism. All of the benefits of AI. The challenge there is people are not able to adopt it, right? People still are sometimes just adverse, right? They're not sure what they can do, what they can't do. I think a lot of organizations right now are trying to identify what is their standard going to look like for their AI offering. Are they going to build something in house? Are they going to supplement that with a Copilot or a ChatGPT or one of the other vendors? It's still very early stages, I think, for people to kind of become product experts, and you need people to be comfortable in the technology to fully take advantage of all of the benefits. So I think right now there are definitely portions of organizations where they have people where AI tools are absolutely helping and reducing digital friction, right? I think people that are comfortable in those tools, they use it in their personal life, they can translate it, and they're using maybe the tool of their choice in their work life. That is absolutely helping to reduce that gap. But I think the large majority of the workforce, depending on the company that we're talking about here, I think they're still in that period of, I don't know how to use these applications the right way, right? I don't know what prompts to use. I don't know what I should say and what I shouldn't say because of sensitive information, in our organization. There is still that lack of adoption and guidance within AI tools, just like there are for other applications that we were talking about earlier that are leading to those friction points. Even in some cases, there might have been a flow state that someone could have achieved without AI, that now they feel like they should inject AI in, and it's taking longer, right? Because they're trying to adopt it, they're trying to put it into their flow, but it's just a little too early in some organizations for it to be a full benefit across everyone.
Which brings us back to the centrality of adoption, as you were discussing earlier, right? So, what are organizations who are getting AI adoption right doing and prioritizing, and what is the best practice?
Yeah, I think it really is dependent on the organization and what type of information that you're dealing with. I think it's tough to make broad sweeps here because of the different levels of AI governance that organizations are going to have to deal with. So, putting that aside, I think having some standardization on a widely used tool, right? So whether that is a Copilot or a ChatGPT, something that people may access in their personal life, I think if you're able to securely get that into your organization, that is probably path of least resistance, right? Because there's going to be some level of familiarity. There's, just logo recognition of these different tools where a larger percentage of your organization is going to feel comfortable going in and starting to leverage all of the benefits that these tools have. I think if you're an organization that is maybe forced, or you're choosing to build your own AI, I commend it. I think it's probably in a secure organization the right approach. I think putting an extreme emphasis on education, training, in-app guidance if you can, right, is absolutely critical, because if the first time that you interact with the tool, if it's really bad, I'm not going back to that tool unless I'm told I have to, right? But if the first time I go into that application, I'm told exactly how to navigate, I'm given some examples, I have, some help icons across the way that I can consistently go to build my confidence in that application, I am way more apt to inject that into my everyday workflow. So I think making sure that there's great and concise communication to your user population when those tools are going out, that's the recipe for success on AI adoption.
If you have a bad experience the first time, you never go back. That might be the history of Copilot right there. Like, I'm
It's
afraid for many people.
Yeah, I think that that adage goes even beyond technology, right? It's you need that first interaction to be seamless. Otherwise, it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth, right? And it takes a lot of work, a lot more work, to get back in the good graces.
It almost points to an evolving sense of what we mean by digital friction, right? For instance, trust. Like, if a user has a hesitation around the degree to which they can trust an LLM they're using, that's a kind of friction, isn't it? That's a kind of that's technology creating a border between you and getting the job done with it, you know. And there's other forms of interruption and ambiguity that come with AI too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I use my mom as an example in some of these cases. So she's a lifelong nurse. She's been a nurse for over 40 years, still actively working. But not every week, but maybe every couple of weeks, we talk about difficulties in Workday or different AI tools that are being sent down, or just different applications that she's trying to keep up with. But it is that trust, right? Is this correct, right? Is this message, this email, this pop up that I'm seeing, is this something that should be there? For people that maybe are not as verbose in their technology stack, or just understanding and using it on a day-to-day basis, those things are very difficult to understand, right, and see the truth behind. So I think there's always that guard up, in different folks around emerging technology, new technology, that specifically with AI, I understand because of its worldwide application, not just its workforce application, but it's definitely something that needs addressing and needs proper communication to make sure that it's going the right way.
And in the commercial sector, there's a if you will, a sort of foundational assumption that the businesses that will survive and compete and flourish in the coming years are going to be the ones that allow themselves to be the most transformed by AI, and therefore that has to work on an individual level, right? Your best employees, hypothetically, are the ones who are most integrative of all this new technology, who are able to absorb it, channel it, be the most agile in its exploitation. And does that not mean that digital friction, to bring it back to our kind of main theme, grows in significance? Anything that gets in the way of that kind of ideal employee and what they could be doing grows in significance, and, as you say, extrapolated across the business, can become detrimental to the business's own competitive agility.
It could, right? I think even over rotating to a certain extent. That's why, specifically with AI, I think putting in guidelines on this is what you should be using AI for, and this is something that you probably shouldn't be using AI for, is very important as people are starting to inject that into the way that they're working. But yeah, 100%. I think it is probably the biggest question mark in the digital friction landscape on will this overall help or hinder productivity and digital friction, because as I mentioned earlier, I think it does clean up a lot of the work, a lot of the the repetitive tasks that people are doing, depending on how you're applying AI. But it does not fix everything, right? It doesn't fix performance issues. It doesn't fix the network. It doesn't fix other things that are still going to be out there. So I think there should be some, not hesitance, but there should be some governance around pulling all of our eggs in one basket, right, when it comes to the AI function. But it definitely will start to implode the friction pieces.
Believe it or not, Mike, we had you may have listened, we had an AI expert, Kay Firth Butterfield, join us last week, and she was insistent that employers were going to have to start being quite clear about talk about what to use AI for and what not to use AI for. Do not necessarily use your professional AI as a quote boyfriend or girlfriend. Was stressed to us as something we
People will find a way, Tom. That's
it's a new world, Mike. It's a new. I can't keep up. I don't know if I want to, but I, I guess there's a question of professional efficiency here. There is an effort or a vision of turning us all into sort of maximally efficient productivity machines, and that
Hmm.
makes digital friction become more visible, doesn't it? Like it's going to stand out more as we become more direct, more efficient, more effective in what we do.
Yeah, I think it does. That's an interesting one for me because I think you're right. Right. If digital friction is a topic, obviously removing the friction points should also follow. And if you're removing all the friction points, then I should just be a fully functioning robot, for lack of a better term, from 8 to 5
Happy
every
robot with
day.
your robot other
Yeah,
half.
everything works. I don't need to take a break. I'm good. I think it's more in depth than that, right? I think when you're in those flow states, right? Those 30-minute, those hour sections where you are really grooving and getting your work done, that's where we want to make sure that we are as minimally disruptive to the end user as possible. The goal for removing digital friction isn't that you're never gonna have an IT problem or you're never going to have an issue within the applications that you're using on a day-to-day basis. I think NextSync and Dex players would like that, and I think eventually we might get there. But the user is still at the forefront, and making them productive, making them happy should be the outcome of reducing digital friction rather than the machine-esque way that you should be working. It also goes through the facet of it doesn't matter who the user is, what type of device they're using, what type of applications they want to use. We as an IT organization should be able to give that person those tools if that's how they think that they're going to be the most productive. And I think if you have all of this visibility across all of these different device types, if you're able to help with application guidance inside these different tools, I think you can achieve that autonomy, right, between the different types of users that you have. Young, old, technologically advanced, not technologically advanced, people that prefer an iPad versus a Lenovo, you name it. I think that's where the information should be used and continuously driving those flow states rather than trying to eliminate every single digital friction, because you're gonna drive yourself mad with the rate of change in technology. There's always going to be things to fix, but let's just try to reduce the visibility to the end user is the overall goal.
It comes back to that core kind of the core value of Dex, right? Which is what is the employee experiencing as the central metric, and I think arguably with a technology as powerful as AI, the only way to perhaps really objectively measure its impact is with the subjective metric of user experience. Bring it back to the human beings who are meant to be empowered by this technology fundamentally.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows how productive you were before AI besides yourself, right? There's no magic number there that I think organizations maybe would love to have to talk about the ROI on AI tools. Once those bills come back from Copilot or whoever you're using, people are going to need that answer pretty quickly. But you're 100% right. The user knows how much more productive they are, how many more projects they're able to accomplish and achieve in a shorter amount of time. So I think it's critical to make the user part of this journey with adoption and reducing digital friction, making sure that you're getting consistent feedback from them, right? What's working, what's not working. Do you feel more productive or less productive? Hopefully it's more productive, but if it's less productive, now you have a roadmap, right? You have something to kind of go in and start to work on.
What about you, Mike? Do you think you're more productive in the AI era, less productive, about the same? What do you reckon?
I think I absolutely am. I think there's enhancements in the NextSync product, as we know, and I'm in the product just about every day, that I think makes me much more efficient in any type of engagement with a customer. Right, showing things that are friction points in their organization becomes a lot easier with the applications that AI or that NextSync is using with AI. And then on a day-to-day basis, I think there is immense value that you can get out of prepping for a customer call, right? Whether that is background on an organization, what are their initiatives, What are their AI initiatives? Maybe even more in the forefront. I think the preparation in both types of those customer facing instances has been drastically reduced because of the way that we're using AI at NextSync. So yes, I can confidently confirm being more
Exactly.
productive.
I tell you, between us, all right, don't tell anybody, but my main metric is I work late less in the AI era than I used to.
There you go. Isn't that just a perfect tell though, right? That's not something that's,
I'm not more productive. I'm just as productive, but it takes me
hey,
less long.
but
So we keep it. Don't let on. All right?
work-life balance is important though, Tom. I think that's another, when you talk about digital friction, if those things do compound, you do have people that are working late, that have a less of a work-life balance. So that's another positive outcome, not just employee attrition. So I think you
I agree.
bring up a great point.
I agree, but I don't want to. Just don't tell our bosses. All right, don't
Secret safe with me.
Keep it between us.
I got you.
I did want to ask you about the IT ticket, but do you know what I think? The future of the IT ticket, the present state of the IT ticket. I think you should come back and join us
I would love
again
it.
next quarter to discuss specifically the IT ticket and the state of the IT ticket in 2026. That would be wonderful because it's been
going
great to have
away,
you on.
Tom. It's going away. It's going away.
You think so? You
There's
think
the teaser.
a little teaser there. That's what we might be getting into next time around. Because I've called these, we've got now one episode a month there where we have like recurrent guests, my often my friends from the company. But I had to call it something, Mike, and I just ended up calling it one-to-ones. It sounds really formal, doesn't it? Like, I'll see you on your next one-to-one. I think I might have to think of a friendlier way of framing it. But it's been a pleasure to have you on this, your first one-to-one. We look forward to having you back very soon. Thanks so much, Mike Lovewell.
Thank you very much, Tom. I really appreciate it. I look forward to coming back as well.
Awesome.
That's it for this week's Deck Show. We'll be back next week. And if you don't already, be sure to follow the show so you don't miss an episode. Until next time.